Hello everyone, welcome back to Home Project Junkies. Today we're going to be talking about our pellet stove and some of the issues that we've had with it, and one issue that keeps reoccurring and how we've fixed it. This is part of the auger that actually sticks up into the hopper of the pellet stove, and at the bottom we have this very thin piece of metal right here that is sheared off of the shaft. Now this shaft is very soft metal to start, and when they drilled out the hole, it's very, very thin right here. So this part right here is sheared right off, and I'll show you why. So the motor that sits up into the shaft, it's not exactly the same inside diameter as the shaft. Now right here we had to grind it in order to get it out. So it has some flares right there from where we ground the shaft in order to be able to slide it out. So when this motor sits up in there, it just barely sits up in there, and it holds at an angle down. So it rocks, and the weight of the motor actually pulls down on the shaft, and it flares out the thin metal, and then it begins to wear. And you'll see a better example of that when I'm actually underneath the pellet stove, and we'll take a look at the new one that actually is put in. And there's nothing holding this motor up, so there's no brackets or anything like that. So the full weight of this motor right here is actually sitting right here in the hole of the shaft, bending down. So it doesn't sit in there straight, it actually bends down. So when this shaft turns, it starts to flare out this hole, and then eventually it breaks. Now we bought this pellet stove in September of 2018, and by January of 2019 we had broken auger. U.S. Stove Company was nice enough to send us a new auger at that time, and we replaced it, not really thinking about it breaking again. We thought maybe it was a manufacturer warranty issue. It was under the 1-year warranty. Now I will say that U.S. Stove Company's customer service has been fantastic. Just after our warranty ran out here in 2019 in December, it had broke again. Now we had only been running it since the end of September, cleaning it out periodically, making sure there was no debris in there. The representative that I talked to said that we need to make sure that the hopper is cleaned and emptied, free of debris, free of dust, and that's what we have done because we've tried to be really careful with this. And we had just cleaned it out, just filled it with pellets, and then that's when it broke again. So it takes about 2.5 to 3 weeks to actually get replacement parts. Now this time when the auger broke, because there's nothing holding this motor up into the actual unit itself, it fell and broke this part right here off as well. So this is one of the male leads that connects into the control board, and it snapped it right off because it sits up in there at an angle like this, and as soon as it sheared the auger off, it dropped and slammed onto the bottom of the pellet stove and snapped this off right here. So they ended up sending us a new motor as well. So the one thing I can say about U.S. Stove Company is that their customer service is actually really great. However, that doesn't really solve the issue of the auger situation and why they keep shearing off. Now from what I've read, this is actually a pretty common issue with this, and I believe it's actually a design flaw. So today we're going to see if we can put some kind of mounting system in there to hold the motor up so that way it doesn't shear off another auger. Okay, with the new auger put into the hopper and sticking out the bottom, you can see the auger right here, the shaft of it sticking out the bottom and connected to the motor itself. Now the only thing holding the motor is just side by side. It's this little bracket here. So that prevents the motor itself from twisting, but you can see how much play is actually in this motor. So it'll slide up in and it just hangs and puts a lot of pressure on the auger shaft itself. So hopefully what I'm going to be able to do is screw a hole here on both sides. I'm going to use some of this strap iron and I'm going to wrap it around the bottom of this motor so it doesn't interfere with any of the electrical system or anything like that, and hold this motor up so that way it is right in line with the actual auger. But hopefully this will be able to show just how much slop is in this motor and how much it moves around. And we turned it on to test it, we looked it over several times, and this is the only thing that we can come up with, is that it just bells that auger shaft out because it's such thin metal over a short period of time as well, and it just begins to do that, and it breaks off right where the key sets into the hole. So it actually shears off the key and it also shears off the auger shaft itself. Alright, so now you can actually see what I was talking about. I wanted to put this strap underneath this motor. Now this picked this up about 1/2 inch, and yes, it's still loose, and I wanted it to be that way. I could have tightened it up a bit more, but now the weight of this motor is not pulling on the shaft and creating that extra stress that is not necessary. So I just weighed this motor, and I used a standard bathroom scale, so who knows how accurate that is, but this thing actually weighs almost 3 pounds. It's like 2 3/4, and in order for that to, I mean, that's a lot of weight on this thin steel just to push down on it. I mean, if I was to hang it like this and push down, I could feel the weight of that just right on that, especially being loose. So putting that strap right around the back side of this to hold this up, so that way there's actually no extra weight on this shaft, because it only sits in just about 1/2 inch. You can see how far it actually sits in. So right here's the hole, line up those holes. It only sits in the shaft about that far itself. It's not very far whatsoever. So that's where it just has all that weight hanging on it. I hope that fixes it. I hope that really does fix it. So now let's talk about one of the other issues that we actually had with this stove. Just after we first got it, I would say, let's see, we got it in September. Probably in November, we had the entire stove just stop working whatsoever. So when I also contacted the company about that, they stated that it was one of two issues. It was either the control board itself, because it was reading ERR, or it was the blower motor. So they ended up sending us both. They didn't want any parts back that in case one of them worked and one of them didn't. Decided to change the blower motor first in case that was the issue, so that way it didn't ruin a control board if I was to put the control board in first and then the blower motor. The blower motor wasn't the issue, so then I put the control board in, and the control board was the issue. So we still have a good blower motor sitting around here as well. Again, they didn't want their parts back. They've never wanted me to send these old broken parts back. Kept the shaft this time, didn't keep the shaft last time. I'm hoping maybe if we have another issue, because there is some slop in the shaft here, and it does stick down a little ways, and there is slop in the motor, it's possible for me to drill a hole about a ½ an inch up and be able to slide this in there, but that would only be a temporary fix. If this doesn't fix the issue, then probably going to end up scrapping this stove. This is an $1,100 pellet stove. It's not cheap. Really don't want to scrap it, but if we have to get something else, we have to get something else. And let me turn you guys around and I'll show you what we have to use and what we have to do to heat the house in the meantime. Well, with all that being said, and hopefully it's a great fix to an issue that is, in my opinion, a design flaw from U.S. stove company, we can use this pellet stove for hopefully years to come. It was supposed to be a great investment. I still think a pellet stove is a great investment because it does free up a lot of time. But on that note, we'll wheel it back into place, we'll give it a shot, keep the wood stove down here, and we'll see you next time on Home Project Junkies. Hello everyone.